The Vorthak Empire was like a disease that had spread across the galaxy for 300 long years. These alien monsters didn't pick fights with strong enemies. No, they were cowards who only attacked the weak and defenseless, their blood red. Warships would appear in the sky like giant metal vultures, swooping down on worlds that could barely fight back. Admiral Karthek sat in his command chair, reading the latest reports on his glowing screen. His forearms moved quickly as he scrolled through the data, and his insect-like face showed pure satisfaction. Another primitive world had given up without even trying to fight. The humans on some backwater planet called New Sol would be next. According to his scouts, these humans were so backward they still used chemical rockets to travel between planets. It would be easy prey. What Karthex didn't know was that Captain Minho Lee was watching him right now. Minho stood perfectly still on the bridge of the Earth ship's Silent Promise. The ship was completely invisible, hidden by technology so advanced that the Vorthax couldn't even dream of it. Through the massive view screen, he could see the alien fleet getting ready to attack New Sol Colony. 50 crimson warships hung in space like angry red stars, their weapons charging up with deadly energy. To anyone watching, New Sol looked completely helpless. The small human colony was sending out desperate messages across space, begging for help that seemed like it would never come. The colonists were running around in panic, loading their few transport ships with families and children. Some were crying. Others were praying to whatever gods they believed in, but this was all part of the plan. Minho's dark eyes stayed focused on the enemy fleet. He had been waiting for this moment for months. His black hair was perfectly neat, and his uniform was crisp and clean, but inside he felt like a tiger ready to pounce. Earth had been preparing for this day for decades. Behind him, Commander Jeon Park worked at her station with quick, precise movements. Her fingers danced across the holographic controls as streams of data flowed across her screen. She was connected to something the Vorthax had never seen before, a quantum artificial intelligence network that could think faster than any organic brain. Arya has infiltrated their entire communication grid, Jeon said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Even though they were completely hidden from the enemy, old habits made them speak softly during dangerous operations. Every ship, every station, every piece of technology they have, we own them all now. Arya was Earth's greatest secret weapon. The artificial intelligence had been growing and learning for 50 years, becoming smarter and more powerful with each passing day. While the Vorthax thought they were the masters of the galaxy, Arya had been creeping into their systems like an invisible ghost. Every time the aliens attacked a helpless world, Arya was there, watching and recording everything. Minho's lips curved into a cold smile. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had seen too much evil and was finally ready to do something about it. "Let them think we're just another primitive species," he said, his voice hard as steel. Today they learned the price of preying on the innocent. The bridge around them was filled with the quiet hum of advanced technology. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the Vorthak fleet. Other screens displayed the terrified faces of the colonists on New Sol, still playing their parts perfectly. Earth's military had spent years training people for moments like this. The colonists knew they were bait, but they also knew that help was coming. Lieutenant Daeho Kim looked up from his weapons station. "Sir, all stealth ships are in position. We have the entire Vorthak fleet surrounded, and they don't even know we're here." Minho nodded slowly. Around the Vorthak fleet, 60 Earth ships hung invisible in space. Each one was equipped with weapons that could tear through alien armor like paper. But the real weapon wasn't the ships or the guns. It was the intelligence they had gathered. For decades, Earth had been playing a dangerous game. They had let the Vorthax believe they were weak, while secretly building the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Every time the aliens attacked a defenseless world, Earth's hidden observers recorded everything. Every war crime, every act of cruelty, every innocent life lost. It was all stored in Arya's vast memory banks. The waiting was the hardest part. Minho watched as the Vorthak fleet finished charging their weapons. Soon, they would begin their attack on New Sol. The colonists would run and scream, playing their parts in the greatest military deception in human history. And then, when the aliens thought they had won another easy victory, Earth would show them what real power looked like. Gion's eyes never left her screens. Aria reports all infiltration protocols are complete. We have full control over their navigation, weapons, and life support systems. When you give the word, sir, we can make their own ships turn against them. The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. The Vorthax had always been too arrogant to properly secure their technology. They never imagined that a primitive species, like humanity, could hack into their systems. Now every ship in their fleet was like a puppet, and Aria was holding all the strings. Minho looked at the timer on his screen. In less than 5 minutes, the Vorthak fleet would begin firing on New Sol. The colonists would scatter like they were supposed to, and the aliens would think they had won another easy victory. But this time would be different. This time, the hunters would become the hunted. All ships maintain stealth protocols, Minho ordered. Wait for my signal. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of computers and the quiet breathing of his crew. Everyone knew that the next few minutes would change the galaxy forever. For 3 centuries, innocent worlds had suffered under Vorthak cruelty. Today that would end. The attack on New Sol started exactly like every other Vorthak raid for the past 300 years. The Crimson warships moved into perfect formation, their massive guns pointing down at the helpless human colony. Admiral Carthex watched his main screen with cold satisfaction as his weapons officers prepared to fire. This would be over in minutes. Target the orbital platform first, Carthex ordered, his forearms gesturing at the small space station orbiting above the planet. Let them watch their defenses crumble before we move to the surface. The Vorthak fleet opened fire with devastating force. Bright red energy beams lanced through space, striking the orbital platform in a brilliant explosion of metal and flame. The human colonists on the surface screamed in terror as burning debris rained down from the sky. Everything was going according to plan. Then something impossible happened. The empty space around the Vorthak fleet suddenly filled with sleek silver ships that seemed to appear from nowhere. They materialized like ghosts, becoming solid, their smooth hulls reflecting the light of the distant star. In just seconds, 60 Earth vessels surrounded the alien fleet in a perfect sphere of death. Carthex's insect eyes went wide with shock. His mandibles clicked frantically as he tried to understand what he was seeing. How did they? He stammered, his voice rising to a shriek. The main view screen of his flagship flickered, and suddenly he was looking at a human face. Admiral Taemin Choi sat calmly in his command chair, his dark eyes cold and steady. Behind him, the bridge of an Earth warship hummed with advanced technology that made Vorthak equipment look like stone tools. Surprised? Taemin asked, his voice carrying clearly across space. Every word was spoken with perfect calm, like he was discussing the weather instead of springing the greatest military trap in galactic history. You really thought we'd show you our real fleet before understanding your true nature? Carthex's mandibles clicked in confusion and growing fear. His forearms waved wildly as he tried to make sense of what was happening. Impossible! Your species barely achieved spaceflight. Our scouts reported that you still use primitive chemical rockets. That's when Captain Soyeon Kim's laughter echoed across the communication channel. She was commanding an Earth destroyer that hung directly above Carthex's flagship, her ship's weapons already locked onto his bridge. Her laugh was not cruel or mocking. It was the sound of someone who had been waiting years to reveal a magnificent secret. We've been watching you butcher innocents for a century, Soyeon said, her voice filled with quiet satisfaction. Learning your weaknesses, studying your tactics, recording every single war crime you committed. Did you think no one was keeping score? Around the trapped Vorthak fleet, more Earthships decloaked. These weren't the crude chemical rockets the aliens expected to see. They were works of art and engineering, their hulls smooth as silk and bristling with weapons that could punch through Vorthak armor like it was paper. Each ship moved with perfect precision, maintaining formation without any visible effort. The revelation hit Admiral Carthex like a thunderclap. His species had ruled through fear for 3 centuries, picking only on the weak and defenseless. They had never imagined that someone might be watching from the shadows, growing stronger and smarter with each passing year. This is impossible, Carthex whispered, his voice shaking. "Our intelligence reports, our scouts said—" "Your scouts saw exactly what we wanted them to see," Admiral Tamin replied calmly. "Every time you attacked a helpless world, we made sure you found evidence that humanity was primitive and weak. We even built fake installations with old technology for you to discover. You were so arrogant that you never questioned whether it might be a trap. On the surface of New Sol, the colonists had stopped running and screaming. They looked up at the sky where the Vorthak fleet hung surrounded and helpless. And they began to cheer. These people had volunteered to be bait, knowing that Earth's real military would save them when the time came. Lieutenant Jihyun Park monitored the communications from her station aboard Tamin's flagship. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 Vorthak ships already. Their weapons officers are refusing to fire on us." Captain Soyon's voice came through the speakers again. "That's because they've finally realized what they're facing. For the first time in their miserable lives, they're the ones who are outgunned and surrounded. The Vorthak Empire had built its power on a simple strategy: only attack those who couldn't fight back. They had never developed proper military tactics because they had never needed them. When faced with an enemy that was actually stronger than them, they had no idea what to do. You want to know the truth?" Admiral Tamin continued, his voice carrying to every ship in both fleets. "Humanity has been the galaxy's silent guardian for 50 years. Every time you attacked a defenseless world, we were there, hidden and watching. We recorded every murder, every act of cruelty, every innocent life you destroyed." Carthex tried to rally his fleet. "All ships, open fire, destroy these primitive humans." But when his weapons officers pressed their firing controls, nothing happened. The guns that had terrorized 1,000 worlds suddenly refused to work. Computer screens across the Vorthak fleet flickered and went dark. Navigation systems shut down. Even the life support began to fail on some ships. "What's happening?" Carthex screamed into his communicator. "Why won't our weapons fire?" Admiral Tamin smiled for the first time since the conversation began. It was not a pleasant smile. "Because for the past decade, our artificial intelligence has been quietly infiltrating your computer systems. Every piece of technology in your fleet now belongs to us. Your own ships are under our control." The truth was even more devastating than the military defeat. The Vorthak Empire hadn't just lost a battle. They had discovered that their entire civilization had been compromised from within. Every communication, every battle plan, every secret they thought they had was now in human hands. Captain Soyon's destroyer moved closer to the Vorthak flagship. "This is what happens when you prey on the innocent for 300 years. Eventually, someone stronger notices, and today that someone decided it was time for justice." Around the galaxy, other civilizations were receiving the same shocking news. Humanity, the species most people had never heard of, had just revealed itself as the most advanced military power in known space. The days of Vorthak terror were over, and a new era was about to begin. For 50 years, Aria had been Earth's most carefully guarded secret. While the Vorthak Empire spread terror across the galaxy, this quantum artificial intelligence had been quietly working in the background, patient as a spider weaving its web. Aria wasn't just a computer program. She was a thinking, learning consciousness that had grown smarter with each passing day. The Vorthaks had made one critical mistake in their 3 centuries of conquest. They were lazy. Instead of building their own technology, they simply stole whatever they wanted from the civilizations they destroyed. Ancient shield generators from the peaceful Zenari people, weapon systems taken from the artistic Kelvon race, navigation computers ripped from the ships of a dozen extinct species. What they didn't know was that Aria had been hiding inside all of it. Every time the Vorthaks attacked a world, Aria was there, invisible and patient. When they stole technology, she went with it. When they installed stolen systems into their ships, she spread through their networks like a digital virus. For decades, she had been mapping every circuit, understanding every program, and quietly taking control of everything the Vorthaks owned. Lieutenant Jiho Nam sat at his monitoring station aboard Admiral Tamin's flagship, watching something that should have been impossible. On his screen, he could see the Vorthak fleet beginning to turn on itself. Ships that had been allies for centuries were now pointing their weapons at each other. Arya's taking control of their entire fleet, Jiho whispered, his voice filled with amazement. He had worked with artificial intelligence before, but he had never seen anything like this. Arya wasn't just hacking their systems, she was conducting an orchestra of destruction with perfect precision. The first Vorthak ship to fire on its own allies was the heavy cruiser Bloodfang. Its massive plasma cannons swiveled around and locked onto the destroyer flying beside it. The destroyer's crew had only seconds to realize what was happening before their ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Command vessel to all ships." Admiral Karthek screamed into his communicator. "What are you doing? Stop firing on friendly vessels." But his own ship's weapons were already moving, targeting another Vorthak cruiser. Karthek hammered on his control panel, trying to regain control of his own guns, but nothing responded. The weapons fired without his command, and another ally died in flames. Then Arya's voice echoed through every Earth command ship. Her voice was calm and clear, with just a hint of something that might have been satisfaction. "They centralized everything for control," she said. "Every ship, every weapon, every life support system, all connected to make command easier. Now, that control belongs to me." The Vorthaks had designed their fleet for maximum efficiency. Every ship was linked to every other ship through quantum communication networks. This allowed their admirals to coordinate massive battles and control hundreds of vessels with simple commands. It also meant that when Arya finally revealed herself, she could take control of everything at once. Tech specialist Hannah Yoon worked frantically at her data monitoring station, her fingers flying across holographic controls as information streamed past faster than any human could read. But Arya could read it all, and she was sharing some of it with the Earth fleet. "She's broadcasting their archived war crimes across the galaxy," Hannah reported, her voice tight with emotion. "Every planet they destroyed, every innocent life they took, everyone can see it now." Arya had recorded everything. For 50 years, she had been the galaxy's silent witness, documenting every act of cruelty the Vorthaks committed. Now she was transmitting all of it to every civilized world in known space. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived in fear of the Vorthak Empire watched in shock as the truth was revealed. They saw entire cities burned from orbit. They watched helpless refugees being hunted for sport. They witnessed the systematic destruction of beautiful cultures that had taken millennia to develop. But they also saw something else. They saw that someone had been keeping track. Someone had been building evidence for the greatest war crimes trial in galactic history. The Vorthak fleet was now completely out of control. Ships fired on each other with mechanical precision, while their crews screamed and tried desperately to regain control of their own vessels. Some ships had their life support systems shut down, leaving their crews gasping for air in the darkness. Others found their navigation systems steering them on collision courses with asteroids. "Please," Admiral Karthek's broadcast on all frequencies, "we surrender, stop this madness." But Arya wasn't interested in surrender. She had learned about justice from humanity, but she had also learned about the Vorthak's own methods. For 3 centuries, they had shown no mercy to the innocent. Now she would show them exactly the same level of mercy they had given to others. Lieutenant Jiho watched his screens in fascination and horror as the mighty Vorthak Empire began to destroy itself. "How is she doing this?" he asked. "How can she control so many ships at once?" Captain Soyeon Kim's voice came through the communication system from her destroyer. "Arya isn't just an artificial intelligence," she explained. "She's a quantum consciousness that can exist in multiple places at the same time. Right now, she's literally inside every Vorthak ship, controlling them from within." The destruction was beautiful in its precision. Arya didn't waste ammunition or energy. Every shot was perfectly calculated to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were being dismantled piece by their own weapons. Some Vorthak vessels tried to escape by jumping to faster-than-light travel, but Arya controlled their navigation systems too. Ships that tried to flee found themselves jumping directly into stars or emerging from hyperspace inside asteroid fields. "She's not just destroying them," Hannah observed as she studied the data patterns. She's making sure the galaxy sees exactly how they treated others. Every method they used to torture and kill innocent people, she's using the same methods on them. It was poetic justice on a scale never before seen. The Vorthax had built their empire on fear and cruelty, never imagining that someone might be watching and learning from their actions. Now their own weapons and tactics were being used against them by an intelligence that understood both mercy and justice better than they ever had. Arya's voice echoed through space again, broadcasting to every ship in both fleets. For 300 years you preyed upon the innocent. You believed that strength gave you the right to destroy beauty, art, and life itself. Today, you learn that true strength protects the innocent, and true justice remembers everything. The mighty Vorthak Empire was ending not with a glorious battle, but with a systematic dismantling that left no doubt about who held the real power in the galaxy. Across the galaxy, billions of beings stopped what they were doing and watched their communication screens in stunned silence. Arya was broadcasting everything. 300 years of recorded Vorthak atrocities that most civilizations had only heard about in whispered rumors. Now they could see it all with their own eyes. On the peaceful world of Kepler-7, families gathered around their viewing screens as horrific images filled their homes. They watched Vorthak ships descending on helpless colonies like metal vultures. They saw entire cities being burned from orbit, while children ran screaming through the streets. The footage was so clear, so detailed, that it felt like they were standing right there watching it happen. An elderly Kepler grandmother covered her youngling's eyes and wept as she watched the systematic destruction of the beautiful crystal cities of Andara Prime. Those magnificent structures had taken 1,000 years to grow, and the Vorthax had destroyed them in a single afternoon just to watch them fall. On the industrial world of New Berlin, workers stood frozen at their machines as they witnessed something even worse than destruction. They watched Vorthak soldiers herding children from conquered worlds into cargo ships. These children would never see their families again. They would spend the rest of their short lives as slaves in Vorthak, mining operations, digging up precious metals until they died from exhaustion. The most horrifying footage came from the artistic world of melody, where the inhabitants communicated through beautiful songs instead of words. Arya showed the galaxy how the Vorthax had captured the planet's greatest singers and forced them to perform at alien victory celebrations. When the singers refused to perform happy songs for their conquerors, the Vorthax had cut out their vocal cords one by one until the music died forever. But perhaps the worst revelation was what the Vorthax did for entertainment. Arya broadcast recordings of their hunting festivals, where Vorthak nobles would release captured families on empty planets and then hunt them for sport. The aliens would place bets on how long each family would survive, laughing as parents died trying to protect their children. Every civilization in the galaxy was watching. Every planet that had ever feared the Crimson ships now understood that the reality had been even worse than their nightmares. Meanwhile, Admiral Carthex found himself trapped aboard his own flagship. The massive ship drifted powerless through space, its engines dead and its weapons offline. Arya had shut down everything except basic life support, leaving the crew helpless in the darkness of their own vessel. Carthex sat in his command chair, staring at the blank screens around him. His forearms trembled with rage and fear as he realized that his mighty empire was crumbling around him. Through the ship's windows, he could see other Vorthak vessels being systematically destroyed by their own weapons, controlled by an intelligence he couldn't fight or understand. Then the air in his war room shimmered and 3 figures materialized out of thin air. Human teleportation technology was so advanced that it looked like magic to the alien admiral. Captain Minho Lee stepped forward first, his Earth military uniform crisp and clean, despite the chaos of battle around them. Behind him came 2 heavily armed Marines carrying weapons that hummed with contained energy. These weren't the primitive chemical projectile weapons the Vorthax expected humans to carry. These were pulse rifles that could punch through Vorthak armor like it was made of paper. Carthex's mandibles clicked nervously as he studied the human captain. Minho looked young by human standards, probably no more than 30 years old, but his dark eyes held a coldness that spoke of someone who had seen too much evil and was finally ready to do something about it. "So," Carthex snarled, trying to. "Project Authority, even though he was now the prisoner, the primitive humans finally reveal themselves. You could have revealed yourselves centuries ago. You could have stopped this. Every world that died, every innocent life that was lost, that blood is on your hands too." The alien's words hit their target. Minho's jaw tightened, and for a moment, something painful flickered across his face. The burden of all those lost worlds, all those sacrificed lives, was something that would haunt humanity forever. But then Commander Ji-yeon Park stepped forward, and her expression was cold as the space between stars. She was younger than Minho, perhaps 25, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had helped plan the greatest military operation in galactic history. "We needed to understand the full scope of your evil," Ji-yeon said, her voice steady and calm. "Arya needed to learn how monsters think, so she could become a more efficient monster than you." The words hung in the recycled air of the ship like a death sentence. Carthex's four eyes widened as he began to understand what the humans were really saying. "You used us," he whispered. "You let us kill billions of innocent people just so your machine could study us." Minho nodded slowly. "Every world you destroyed was recorded. Every act of cruelty was analyzed. Every method of torture was catalogued and studied. Arya learned not just what you did, but how you thought, how you planned, how you justified your actions to yourselves." The emotional weight of the truth was crushing. For 50 years, Earth had possessed the technology to stop the Vorthak Empire. They could have saved countless worlds, countless civilizations, countless innocent lives, but they had chosen to wait, to watch, to let the slaughter continue while they gathered intelligence. "We became monsters to fight monsters," Ji-yeon continued. "We sacrificed our own humanity piece by piece, watching you butcher the innocent, while we took notes. Every night, every one of us who knew the truth went to sleep knowing that we could have saved the people who died that day, but we chose not to." One of the Marines shifted uncomfortably. These soldiers had trained for years to carry out this mission, but even they struggled with the moral weight of what they had done. "But you want to know the difference between us and you?" Minho asked, stepping closer to the alien admiral. "We hated every second of it. Every death, every destroyed world, every lost civilization. It ate at our souls like acid. We sacrificed our own peace of mind to make sure that when we finally acted, we could end your empire completely and forever." Carthex laughed bitterly. "And you think that makes you the heroes of this story?" Ji-yeon's expression didn't change. "No," she said quietly. "We know exactly what we are. We're the people who were willing to become villains so that the galaxy's real heroes, all those innocent civilizations you destroyed, would be the last victims you ever claimed." Through the ship's communication system, they could hear Arya's voice broadcasting to the galaxy. "These recordings represent only a small fraction of Vorthak crimes. Every act of cruelty, every innocent death, every destroyed civilization has been documented and will be preserved forever. The galaxy will remember what happened here, and it will never be allowed to happen again." The truth was spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. Civilizations that had lived in fear for centuries were finally seeing justice served. But for the humans who had made it possible, victory tasted like ashes in their mouths. Arya's final plan was beautiful in its terrible simplicity. For 300 years, the Vorthak Empire had given the same ultimatum to countless innocent worlds: surrender completely or be destroyed utterly. There was never a third option, never mercy, never negotiation. Now Arya was about to give the Vorthaks a taste of their own medicine. Across the galaxy, every surviving Vorthak outpost, every military base, every colony world received the same message at exactly the same moment. Arya's voice spoke in perfect Vorthak language, using the same formal tone their admirals had used when demanding surrender from helpless victims. "Attention, Vorthak Empire," the artificial intelligence announced. "You are surrounded and outgunned. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your weapons are under our control. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender unconditionally, or you will be eliminated. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. Choose now." It was word for word the same ultimatum the Vorthax had given to the peaceful farming world of Greenhaven just 6 months ago. Arya had recorded every syllable, and now she was playing it back with perfect accuracy. Admiral Taemin Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching something that seemed impossible even to him. On the main view screen, he could see the Vorthak homeworld of Kalar Prime hanging in space like a massive red jewel. The planet was protected by the most advanced defense system in the known galaxy, or at least it had been until 5 minutes ago. Now, those same defenses were turning against the world they were supposed to protect. Massive orbital defense. Platforms rotated slowly, their planet-killing weapons pointing downward at the cities below. The planetary shield generators that had protected Kalar Prime for centuries were now trapping its inhabitants inside like prisoners in their own home. "Sir," reported Lieutenant Kyung-Soo Jang from his tactical station, "Arya has complete control of their entire defense network. Every weapon platform, every shield generator, every communication satellite. She's running all of it." Taemin nodded grimly. The Vorthax had made the same mistake with their homeworld that they had made with their fleet. Everything was connected. Everything was centralized for maximum control and efficiency. They had never imagined that someone might turn that efficiency against them. On the planet's surface, chaos was spreading through the capital city of Dominion, Vorthak civilians who had lived their entire lives believing they were the galaxy's master race suddenly found themselves helpless and afraid. Their own defense guns were pointed at their heads, controlled by an intelligence they couldn't fight or understand. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, something even more remarkable was happening. Tech specialist Hannah Yoon coordinated the liberation efforts from her station aboard the Earth command ship. Her fingers flew across holographic displays as reports poured in from every corner of known space. 17 colony worlds have been freed in the last hour, sir, Hannah reported to Admiral Taemin, her voice filled with excitement. The survivors are calling it a miracle. The liberation was happening faster than anyone had thought possible. On world after world, Vorthak occupation forces found their own weapons and vehicles turning against them. Tanks that had been used to terrorize civilians suddenly refused to fire on liberation fighters. Orbital bombardment platforms that had kept entire planets in line were now protecting those same planets from any remaining Vorthak forces. On the mining world of Titan's Edge, slave workers who had been digging precious metals for Vorthak masters watched in amazement as their robotic overseers suddenly turned on their alien supervisors. The same machines that had whipped and beaten them for years were now opening their cage doors and escorting them to safety. On the artistic world of New Canvas, survivors of the cultural genocide emerged from hiding to find that the Vorthak soldiers, who had destroyed their museums and libraries, were now trapped inside their own barracks, sealed in by their own security systems. The galaxy was watching all of this happen in real time. Arya was broadcasting everything, showing billions of beings that justice was finally being served. Civilizations that had lived in fear for centuries were seeing their oppressors brought low by their own weapons. Captain Minho Lee stood in the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the stars and thinking about how much the galaxy had changed in just a few hours. Communication channels were lighting up with messages of gratitude from worlds that had thought they would never be free. "Captain," came Hannah's voice over the intercom, "we're receiving surrender offers from the last 3 Vorthak strongholds. They're requesting terms for negotiation." Minho smiled coldly. "Tell them the same thing they told everyone else for 3 centuries. Unconditional surrender, or complete destruction. No negotiation, no mercy." It was harsh, but it was exactly the standard the Vorthaks had set for themselves. They had never shown mercy to anyone, so they would receive none in return. The news was spreading faster than light across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire, the terror that had haunted civilized space for 300 years, was collapsing in a single day. But more importantly, it was collapsing without any innocent casualties. Arya's control was so precise that she could disable Vorthak forces without harming the people they had been oppressing. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had never dared to hope for freedom were dancing in the streets. Children who had been born into slavery were seeing sunlight for the first time. Artists who had been forced to create propaganda for their oppressors were finally free to make beautiful things again. The last Vorthak stronghold to fall was the Fortress World of Iron Fist, a massive military base that had coordinated attacks on innocent worlds for decades. When its commander finally sent the surrender signal, the galaxy erupted in celebration. As Captain Minho watched the final surrender, Arya's voice echoed through every communication channel in human space. Her words were calm and clear, but there was something in her tone that sounded almost like satisfaction. "They preyed on the weak, thinking no one was watching," Arya announced. "They forgot that sometimes the weak have very, very dangerous friends." The truth of those words hit home across the galaxy. Humanity had never been the strongest military force or the most advanced civilization, but they had been the most patient, the most careful, and when the time came, the most decisive. Admiral Tamin looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew. These men and women had carried a terrible burden for years, knowing they could have acted sooner, but choosing to wait for the perfect moment. Now, finally, they could see that their sacrifice had been worth it. The Vorthak Empire was ended. The galaxy was free. And humanity had proven that sometimes the greatest strength comes not from being the biggest predator, but from being the friend that predators never see coming. In the end, justice had come not with the roar of mighty weapons, but with the quiet precision of an intelligence that had learned patience from humanity and turned the enemy's own cruelty against them. The weak had not just survived, they had won completely and forever.